breakfast dish. It's a version of chicken and waffles. I personally never been a fan of chicken waffles. I always thought it sounded really weird, never tried it. I wasn't really turned on by syrup on my chicken with a waffle. But I am an absolute sucker for anything Nashville hot chicken. It is my favorite sandwich. It's my favorite type of hot sauce on chicken. I absolutely love it. So I was at this restaurant in downtown Detroit called Carl's, and they had a Nashville hot chicken and waffles. And it was a morning before a football game for my kids' high school. I took them down there and I was just killing time with my girlfriend. And so we decided to try this thing, and holy cow, it was freaking awesome. So naturally, one thought I had was, okay, I'm gonna make it. I looked at it, there was a lot of stuff going on with it. So I decided it was worth 18 bucks. I'll drive down there anytime she wants to go have it again, and we'll just enjoy this dish that way. But as it turns out, that restaurant closed the next time we tried to go there to have it, and it was a pretty big bummer, but I started to work at trying to figure out how to recreate this dish, and a little bit of trial and error, had a couple of things that just didn't work out right, but I got it all figured out now, and I want to share it with you guys. This is an absolute superb dish. There's a lot of steps, takes a little bit of time to make, but trust me, it is so worth it. So I'm gonna jump in and we'll get started on this step by step. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this chicken out and I'm gonna get it seasoned, because I like to let that salt and pepper sit on that chicken for a while before I add it into the cream and egg that I prep it before I toss it in the breading to deep fry it. So we're gonna get the chicken out, we're gonna salt and pepper it, and I'll show you how I'm gonna do that. I take chicken breasts and I kind of shave them. And I cut them in so they're a little thinner. It tastes a little better. You get more seasoning on the chicken. So I'm gonna take these pieces out of these bags. I'm gonna rinse them off, get them on this cutting board, and I'll show you the seasoning side of it. So initially, the only thing we're gonna season this with is salt and pepper. And I like to put a lot of pepper on just one side. I don't do both sides. Don't really have a reason why. I had a recipe a while back that called for it to do this way, and I liked it, turned out good, so I just don't mess with it. But like I said, if you watch here, I pepper one side a lot. When I get to the salt, you'll see I don't use too much of the salt. Just gonna lightly salt them. What I like to do is take my hand and push down on that seasoning. The only way you don't have to do this is if you get a chance to season these the day before and leave them in the fridge, then that pepper and that salt soaks down into that meat and you get a really good thorough seasoning. But I like to push that pepper down so it gets kind of grabbed by that chicken, because when we go to throw this in, I use a cream and egg kind of like a pre-brine before I throw it in the breading to get the breading to stick to it better. It makes the breading a little more thick. The pepper will just rinse off if you don't take some kind of effort to pushing it in. If you do it the day before, that pepper's fine, but this works well too by pushing this down on there. I'm gonna transfer these over to a paper plate. I'm gonna clean my cutting board up. And I'm gonna start prepping some vegetables. All right, the only vegetables this calls for is a regular onion, like a sweet onion, and green onion. I'll start showing you how I do that. I actually cut the onion a special way so that when we deep fry these, we'll get like almost a long, strainy, curly onion, and it's not necessary. I mean, you can do it any way you want it, but it makes your dish look cooler at the end. Now, if you watch the amount that I'm doing here, this is about the right amount, 1 onion for every 2 chicken and waffles that you make. This is pretty average how I do it. But again, if you're gonna do more than this, you just multiply what we're doing. So this is where I'm able to get that curly cue. You're gonna cut the onion down to the center, and then that's it. You're gonna stop right there. See where that knife stopped? Then you're gonna do like you normally do, get rid of this outer layer on your onion. Now you're going to take on the edge, and you're going to cut these to your desired thickness. You can go a little thicker, you can go extra thin, whatever your preference is for your onion. Another way you can do it is you can just cut it in these slices and then just take and lay it on the board and put your tip in the middle and pull out to the outside, but leave it so that it's split like this. And we're going to break these apart when we put them in the brine before we deep fry them. And then when they deep fry, they'll twist into a curly cube. We're going to set this aside for now. We're not ready to do anything with those just yet. We're going to get our green onion ready. And again, these are your liking for thickness. Once that's done, we're going to set these aside. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the waffle batter. This is something my sister got me turned on to, this Krusty's brand. It's really good. I'd recommend it. If you don't have a favorite brand already, give this one a try. It's pretty excellent. But we're just going to follow the instructions on the back that calls for making 2 to 3 waffles. Mix good, make sure all the lumps are out. Set that aside. The waffle maker, I like to get set up and I plug it in so it's preheated, so it's ready for me right at the end. Get our deep fryer set up. I do my deep frying outside, and the reason I do that, I don't like it to stink up my apartment here or anytime I'm indoors. I like to use peanut oil when I'm deep frying. I'm going to take this outside, I'm going to get it plugged in. I am going to turn the temperature setting to about 375, closer to 400. With this smaller one, when I throw stuff in there, it cools it down right away, so I like to start a little hot. I think if you have a nice big one, it'd probably be 375. Once I get the chicken in there, the chicken's usually going to take about 5 minutes. It really depends. I'll leave it in a little bit longer if I want it to look a little bit more brown or a little more crispy. But I'm going to get going on this. I'm going to take this outside and get it hooked up. We're going to wait for this to warm up, and we're going to go to the next steps. Now, while that oil's heating up, I'm going to get my next bowl out, and we're going to make the brine that I pre-soaked the chicken in. And then once I get the chicken done and I toss it into the deep fryer, I'm going to use that same brine and I'm going to put my onions in it. So I'll show you how I do that. It's real simple. Depending on how much you're doing, if you're doing a bunch of chicken, you may need to do more than this, but for the size of batch that I'm making for this video, you need 1 egg, and use half and half. Doesn't really matter how much. I mean, you can kind of measure that out by your own preference, but if you wanted to put an amount to it, I would say probably about a cup. And then you're going to mix that egg together with it. Then you're just going to take, once that's mixed together, it'll have a little bit of a yellow tint to it. And you're going to put that chicken in there and let that soak. So now I'm going to grab just a gallon bag. If you got one of those shakers for your chicken or whatever you deep fry, that's fine. I like to just use a gallon bag. I'm going to pour the breading mix in that gallon bag so that when I'm ready to do the chicken, when the grease is hot enough, I can take and shake that in the bag and then pull it out and put it in the deep fry. This is the deep fry that I recommend. It's the Kentucky Colonel. I've tried a bunch of different ones, and this one seems to have the best breading that really soaks up the hot oil when you get ready to turn these pieces of chicken into Nashville hot chicken. Anything will probably work. If you got one that you prefer over the other, I'm sure it'll be fine. But anything with a nice breading on it is real good because it grabs that hot oil and soaks it in nice. Our waffle iron has gotten to as hot as it's supposed to be. I'm going to unplug that for now. until we're ready to use it. And that way, when I'm ready for it, I plug it in. It'll just take a quick second for it to get up to temp. So the next thing I want to do is we are going to make the seasoning that goes into the oil. And once we mix this seasoning, what you do is you'll take a scoop of oil out of the oil that you use to fry your chicken and your onions, and you're going to put it into a small pan, and then you're going to add this seasoning mix that we're about to make, and you kind of stir it, and on high it'll start to froth and almost turn into a foam, and you'll see that in the video. And then that's when you dip your chicken in there. The batch we're going to make is bigger than what you need, so we're going to make a full batch. And then what I would say is pour it off into a bag, and you're probably only going to need a quarter scoop of it. You won't need the full amount. It's just more than, it's too excessive. You'll be throwing a bunch away, and some of these seasonings are kind of pricey, but I'll jump into this seasoning and we'll get mixing that, and you can see how that goes. So now we're moving on to making the seasoning that goes in the hot oil to make this a Nashville hot. This is the secret ingredient. It's not so secret, you can look them up anywhere, but the secret ingredient to making this Nashville hot chicken sandwich. So we're gonna start with a quarter cup of ground cayenne red pepper. So again, there's a quarter cup. Like I said, this is going to be more than what you need. You can either take and divide all of these measurements in half, or you can make it and put it in a bag and just use what you need with your hot oil till you get the consistency you're looking for. This recipe that I'm going to do calls for 3/4 cup of oil, so it's a big recipe for a lot of chicken. I would say it's probably 4 to 6 pieces of chicken if you use this full recipe. So again, it's quarter cup of cayenne pepper. It's going to be a tablespoon of smoked paprika, a tablespoon of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon of regular salt. I just take and I mix this up with my hands. It's really, you're just kind of breaking up that brown sugar, getting it to mix everything in together. Just so it mixes good, everything looks like it's all together. And like I said, this is more than what you need for doing just 2 patties. If you're gonna do 4 patties, this is probably enough. You're gonna use 3/4 cup of oil. And again, if it doesn't look like enough oil, throw some more oil in there. One thing I learned with this, that if you add more oil, it'll actually take the heat down, like it won't be as hot of a spice. And if you use less oil, more of that cayenne pepper sticks to that chicken and it gets hotter. So those are some things that you can do to kind of cool this down. When I make these for my mom, she likes only one side tossed in the hot oil to keep that from the whole patty being too hot for her. When I make these for my girlfriend, I use extra dressing. So I'm gonna go through this. We're gonna set this aside and wait for that to come up again. So the next thing I like to do just before I get ready to do the chicken is I like to set the oven to keep warm. In between, there's kind of some steps here, and you just don't want certain things getting cold while you're going to the next step. So when the chicken's done, I'm gonna pull it off and I'm gonna put it in the oven under a keep warm setting. Then I'm gonna start the vegetables. And then once the vegetables and the chicken are done, I'm going to prepare the hot oil, and I'm going to make the chicken into the Nashville hot chicken. And then while I'm doing that, I'm gonna preheat the waffle iron, and I'm gonna do the waffles very last. Waffles get cold real quick, and I like to do that as my very last step. And then once we get all that done, I'll show you how I put it all together. So the next step is we're gonna go ahead and get that oven set to keep warm. I like to take my pan, put paper towels on it. This helps absorb some of that grease when it comes out of the deep fryer. Okay, so my next step is, from here, I'm gonna take my chicken out, I'm gonna let it kind of drip dry. I'm gonna get it in this bag so I can toss it around just before I throw it in the hot grease. As soon as I do that, I'm gonna move the onions into there, and I'm gonna kind of massage those onions around so they break apart and they get into those single strands. I'm not gonna leave them in there very long though. Once I get those broke apart and before I take the chicken out, I'm gonna get a strainer out and I'm going to dump those onions in a strainer and let them strain while my chicken's deep frying. So watch closely how I do this. You notice that pepper stuck to that chicken really good because we pressed it on. I'm gonna transfer it over. And I like to give this a little bit of a toss so that it's not wet piece of chicken on wet piece of chicken. Sometimes you have a hard time getting the breading to come over and get in between if you do that. Now we're gonna take these onions and we're gonna put them in here and kind of massage these around so they come apart. And that way we're getting a little bit of cream and a little bit of egg on every strand of onion. What you don't want to do is leave them like this. This is what we're breaking apart inside that bowl. So that way, when we go to deep fry these, they turn into nice strands. You don't have an onion patty when you're done doing this. So you take those onions now, see how they're all separated nicely? They're tossed good in here. Now we're going to transfer these over to a strainer and let them strain while we throw the chicken on for the deep fry. Now we're gonna let that drip dry. And we're gonna go start on our chicken. Now that we've put our chicken in the deep fry, we're gonna set a timer for about 4 minutes to check on it. Usually it's 4 to 5 minutes, it's good, but it might not be ready in 4 minutes. We're gonna take a look, and if it has to go a little longer, we'll let it do that. Now, while we're waiting for that 4 minutes, I'm gonna get the pan out and get things ready so that we can do that hot Nashville hot chicken oil bath once them pieces of chicken are ready. So we're getting close on our 4 minutes that we're done before deep fry. I'm gonna get these in a little bit earlier than I had originally said. It helps to let them sit in that breading and kind of absorb that. I'm gonna seal this up. Getting tossed good in that breading. So I brought this in to show you something on how I do this last step. Normally I do this outside, like over in the woods or off somewhere where it's not going to really be a big deal. But I like to take my onions and pour them right in here. I do this as a last step because I'm done with this batter now, and I'm not going to reuse it because it had raw chicken in it. But usually outside it's really easy. I just take and I shake this like this to get rid of as much of that batter that went in there as possible. And usually that ends up on the ground, but in this case I just did it on a plate to show you how I do it. And then it goes right in the garbage. Now I'm going to take this basket back out. I'm going to throw it in there and we're going to do it for the next, usually about 3 minutes on these. And it's a good time to get that hot oil started. So at the same time, I'm going to take that small pan with me so that I can add the oil to it and bring it in and get it on the stove. I'm going to take my measuring cup to scoop the hot oil, and I'm going to use a 1/3 cup. I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, but I would take a little bit more than a 1/3 cup because you can add seasoning if you need to, but we're just going to add seasoning until it looks like it's the right consistency, and we'll do that together on the stove. I'm going to get this hot oil done, and then I'm going to get the onion rings out, I'm going to finish making the hot chicken and get it back in the oven to keep warm, and then I'm gonna move to the waffles. If I was having somebody help me with this, I would have them start on the waffles probably right now. Timing wise, you're in the last few minutes of this dish. And so now our pan's good and hot, our oil's good and hot. We're gonna start to add some of this seasoning. See how that sizzles right up and starts to fry? We're gonna mix that in. Add a little bit more. It should be a liquid consistency, but right there, see how it starts to look real frothy and foamy? That is absolutely perfect for getting a perfect coat of Nashville hot on there. You end up with a nice red looking piece of chicken. If you get this too thick, you'll get really thick seasoning on there, and it makes it super hot. It's not terrible, it's just extra hot. And right there is about what you're going for. And that is it, that seasoning, it's done. We're gonna move that off the burner. Go ahead and let that cool. It's a lot easier to clean up when it's cool. We're gonna leave these things set aside. And this goes back in the oven to keep warm when we make our waffles. All right, now that we got the Nashville chicken ready, the onions are ready, we're gonna leave them in the keep warm setting. I'm gonna get this waffle iron plugged back in and heating back up. Should be pretty quick because we already preheated it. You're gonna want a spray oil. I use a coconut spray oil. This particular brand is really great. It's got a compressed can with a bag of oil inside of it. This company does a really good job of taking healthy oils and keeping them healthy by not having to add any additives to make it a compressed spray. Then the other toppings you're gonna need for this recipe is blue cheese crumbles, dill pickle chips, your favorite blue cheese dressing. I like to use this Ken's Light chunky blue cheese. This is really good. There's a couple other ones that are good. Sometimes I'll use if they don't have this. Then you're gonna need your favorite maple syrup. I like to do something a little different here. I always get something a little different for this recipe, and this one I have a bourbon barrel aged maple syrup. It's really good to go with that. Just something a little bit different, a little bit cool. Once this gets heated up, we're gonna get these waffles made and we'll finish up the rest of this recipe. Okay, we got our green light now. We're gonna go ahead and prep this waffle iron and get this thing rolling. For my waffle settings, it's usually 3 to 5 minutes, but I'm gonna check this in about 2.5 minutes because I preheated it twice now. Your waffle iron gets a little bit hot, so I'm gonna check that in about 2.5 minutes. All right, like I thought, took about 2.5 minutes and those things were done. I like to do a little less batter in there. It makes a really cool looking edge rather than having that full waffle. I know that either way is good, but I just like that little bit of a rough edge look. So now we're gonna go in and finish these bad boys up. All right, with everything here in place, we're gonna start with the maple syrup. And when I put this syrup on, I like to just hit every single pocket nice and lightly. I don't like to do too much of the maple syrup when I make these. It's really a personal preference. If you love that maple syrup, then go ahead and go crazy with it. I found that just a little bit in each pocket is just enough sweetness for this recipe. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take those pieces of chicken, we're gonna place them on their center. From here, we are going to add the blue cheese. These crumbles, you can do them by hand or you can try to shake them out of the container. Whatever works best for you. Just get kind of an even amount. Again, all of this is personal preference. You like extra blue cheese, cake it on there. You like extra blue cheese dressing, cake it on there. My girlfriend actually has me put extra blue cheese on hers when I do them for her. That way it knocks that heat out a little bit from that Nashville hot chicken. All right, the next step we're gonna do is we're gonna take the green onions. We're gonna spread these on here. Now we're going to take our dressing. You just want to drizzle that on there. You don't want to go too heavy again unless you really like your blue cheese. I like to do just a little bit, not get carried away. Some people like it real thick on there. Some don't. My personal preference, I like it just drizzled nicely. It gives it a nice look, has a nice flavor to it. Then you're going to take your onion rings. You're going to place them on top of that piece of chicken. You know, spread them up evenly between the two pieces. All right, now the last thing we're gonna put on here is the dill pickle chips. And a good rule of thumb is about 3 or 4 per waffle. You can do more than that if you'd like. It's just kind of what I go for as a standard. If somebody likes extras, go ahead and throw a few extra on there, just like everything on these. It's personal preference, you kind of do what you want. And that wraps it up. There's your Nashville hot chicken and waffles with blue cheese dressing and onion rings. You put all these ingredients together and say them in a sequence and it sounds disgusting. You're asking yourself, how on earth can that even be palatable? But trust me, these things are freaking delicious. Everyone I've taken them to and made them for has loved them. I'm excited for you to have the recipe now. Can't wait for you to share them with your friends and family. Hopefully everything I shared here with you has been useful and helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my other stuff. Have a good one.